Hello, everyone, and welcome to Haway the podcast. It's Gav, and you join us for this week's look ahead to the weekend's action with an opposition supporter and journalist today, because I have the pleasure of being joined by Jack Kelly. Hello, mate.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. And I know we would rather be talking in happier times, but we are just talking off the back of a defeat for both of our teams, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit more later in the pod. But how are you feeling? This is just to let people have a peek behind the curtain. We aren't recording this on a Saturday. We're doing this very early in the week. We're actually doing this before you play AFC Wimbledon in the League Cup, but we are recording the day after you've just played Chelsea and lost to Chelsea. So how's the mood this morning?
Yeah, it's a little raw. I think I came out the ground yesterday and I was like, well, there was a lot of positives to take. And then you wake up this morning and go, oh, we just lost a derby. That doesn't feel great. But yeah, I think I probably need some time to dissect it. Definitely going to react on my own channels and stuff. But already looking ahead to the next game, which is always exciting.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, that, isn't it? Playing a derby in the first game. I can't imagine we would ever play Newcastle first game of the season. Yeah, I mean, obviously they probably wanted a big game for Sky on Monday night, right? But yeah. I mean, it did have a weird feeling going into it, because normally, like, I'll just draw off last season example playing Newcastle. Both times we played Newcastle, we were going into the game, doing pretty well in the table. Like, obviously, we already kind of knew our place in the league at both points when we played them. Whereas like you've just played Chelsea first game of the season when it's like just off the back of pre-season. So was it a bit strange?
Yeah, because I suppose when you get the fixture list, the first fixture you look out for is Brentford or Chelsea, and to have them first, it feels like you're unprepared for a bit of a rivalry because you're so fresh into the new season. It did feel a bit odd, but I think because of Arbeloa and I think because of Alonso, that's the narrative that Sky wanted to go with. And at the time, Arbeloa wasn't appointed, but it looked like it was on the cards. So I think that was probably the reason behind it. We played Brentford fairly early on in seasons before. We played Chelsea in the third game of last season. So these things do happen. I mean, it was a bit strange because I was a little bit unprepared for like the intensity of the rivalry, especially from our side. I think Chelsea sort of see us as not a massive issue, but it was a great game of football. But I would have liked this fixture maybe slightly later on in the season for sure.
What did you make of how you played then? Was there much to go off, like particularly going into the game at the weekend? Is there anything that stood out where you're like, oh, we need to work on that, or that was a little bit different to under the last manager? Like, what was your kind of overall perspective of how you played?
Well, I've seen Fulham throughout pre-season, and we have implemented this new style of play where it's a high line, sort of committing a lot of bodies forward, which leaves us incredibly exposed at the back. And because we're playing against, friendly opposition, it wasn't too much of an issue. You sort of highlighted it and when that could be an issue when we play some Premier League sides, and especially of Chelsea's quality. And it was just the most disastrous start. I mean, we were in a good shape. It was one header that sort of caught everyone out. Cuenca slipped as Palmer played it through to João Pedro, and then they scored after 30 seconds. It's the worst start to a Premier League season you could make. But yeah, the style is going to take some getting used to for sure. It's going to have a lot of fans with their hearts in their mouths because Fulham just commit so many men forward, and then when you're playing against a side with quality who can hit you on the counter attack in transition, that's where Fulham were really vulnerable last night. But then going forward, we look really good. So there's loads of positives to take, but there's also like a few like, well, we're definitely going to need a new centre back. We're going to need some time to adjust to this because teams could just pick us off when they have the ball in transition, and if we're behind it and we're running back and chasing back towards our goal, we're going to concede chances and maybe concede more goals.
You mentioned the transfer window there. I'm just looking at the business that you've done so far. Spent a decent amount of money, a couple of forwards in Jonah Kusi-Asare from, I think I got that right, from Bayern Munich, Gonzalo Garcia from Real Madrid, which is obviously your big statement signing so far of the summer. And he's somebody we're a little bit familiar with because he was linked with us last summer. I don't know how true that was, that we were even in for him. Cesar Palacios from Real Madrid. So obviously a couple of players following Arbeloa across. Shea Charles from Southampton for a lot of money for a player who's, only really had one or two decent seasons in the EFL. And then a couple of youth signings. And obviously you've lost Diop and Lukic, who both went to Ipswich, and we played against them at the weekend. But there's not been a massive amount of change in your squad. Obviously, Harry Wilson, he left to join Leeds on a free over the summer. He was a big player for Fulham last season. So how do you view the transfer market? Are you happy? Are you a bit concerned? Is there much more to do?
I think I'm fairly pleased with how it's gone so far, but it's sort of dawned on me that the window closes in about a week, and we still have quite a lot to do. The business has been pretty fun, to be fair. Gonzalo Garcia was brilliant last night, got his first goal for the club. Palacios is a really good technical player who could definitely make things happen, and his link up with Josh King was fantastic with Oscar Bob, etc. Shay Charles is a player who I think is ready for the Premier League completely. He had two really good loan spells. Two good seasons at one at Sheffield Wednesday, then back at Southampton last season. He was brilliant for Saints last season, and I think, like I say, he's Premier League ready. Came on last night and looked fantastic. Joni Kusiasari was a player we had on loan last season. He didn't make any impact really at all, but we signed him on a permanent because we can see some potential there. But yeah, Fulham need to definitely enter the market for the final week of the window. A centre back needed. Right wing cover needed, probably maybe another centre mid, maybe another fullback. After last night, again, people are calling for another keeper to come in because Bernd Leno seems to be making error after error. So, yeah, there's quite a lot to do. I'm fairly concerned that we don't have enough time to do everything, but it's been a better window than it was this stage last season, where we'd only signed a free transfer last summer up until deadline day, and then we got 2 players in on deadline day, or no, 3 players on deadline day. One was a permanent deal, so we only signed 1 permanent player, which was Kevin last summer. But so far, it's been a decent window, but it's all gone a little bit quiet in the last couple of weeks. And I think that the build up to this game last night, the start of the new season, has sort of been a little bit of a distraction, and fans have sort of in the last couple of days gone, oh yeah, by the way, we've only got a week left and we've got quite a lot to do. So hopefully, I'm expecting a busy deadline day. It usually is at Fulham. So that could be good fun a couple of days after the Sunderland game.
Yeah, and by the time people listen to this, both of us could have been pretty busy over the coming days. But as it stands, like there's nothing really in the offing with us either. But things change very quickly, don't they? I would imagine, though, a bit like us, if there is a deal to be done over the next sort of 3-4 days or whatever it is, I would imagine you wouldn't be throwing players straight in. I don't know about if you're with our manager. He likes to give players a bit of time to bed in. You know, they might be on the bench. They might even play a little bit of a part on Sunday, but it's probably not enough time to fully bed someone in and chuck them in. Is it the same with Fulham?
I think so. Maybe like the fact that everyone's got used to the new system, the new style in pre-season, to throw a new signing in who's been signed a few days before into the deep end. Right now we're playing with 2 centre backs who are left-footed, which is a little bit unbalanced. And we obviously need a right-footed centre back. Yalki Manderson can obviously come back in on Sunday, but he's just not quick enough to deal with what we're going to have to deal with Sunderland and what we've had to deal with against Chelsea last night, which was balls over the top or hitting us on the counter-attack. And at least Bassey's got that pace to get back. Cuenca's got that pace to get back. But if we were to make signings before the Sunderland game, I don't expect them to be starting, but to be bedded in over these next few weeks. And then obviously there's an international break as well, so a chance to get fully up to speed with things. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be able to sign anyone before that game, but we sort of need to, because we need to bolster the squad and we need to add. But Sunderland's going to be a massive game. Both lost on opening day, ourselves and Sunderland, so eager to get off to winning starts. And obviously Sunderland doing the double over them last season was fantastic. I was expecting us to lose at the Stadium of Light, but we actually came away with a 3-1 win. But it's going to be a tough atmosphere, and the atmosphere is always top at the Stadium of Light as well. The Sunderland fans, they cry for everything: throw-ins, goal kicks, time wasting and stuff like that. And with the new rules, I'm sure it's going to be even more intense. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned Arbeloa a few times there. Were you ready for a change of manager? Because obviously Marco Silva was one of the longest serving managers in the Premier League, had done, on the face of it, looked like he'd done a very good job, and he's bounced around a few different Premier League clubs over the last decade or so and hasn't always convinced, but he's obviously got something about him because he keeps getting really good jobs, and he had longevity at Fulham, which is important. I mean, when you look at the amount of I mean, Forest had 4 managers last season. So there are clubs in the Premier League who don't even give sometimes 2 months to a manager. So you look at the longevity he had, and there's a few clubs in this boat. I think you can probably put Manchester City in this boat. Bournemouth with Iraola leaving, I think was a big departure there. Eddie Howe leaving Newcastle, and there are probably other examples which don't come off the top of my head, but there are clubs in the Premier League who have changed manager, and it throws quite a lot up in the air. And obviously, as a fan, you're probably quite optimistic about change initially, at least, because it's like, wow, everything's different, and we've got a new manager, we've got new players, we're playing a different way. But does that concern you at all? That somebody who'd been there for such a long time, these are his players, this is his club, his squad, everything about the team is Marco Silva, really? Like, does it concern you a little bit that you've gone through this change at a time when the Premier League's going through quite a lot of change across the board?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 5 years of Marco Silva, stability, promotion, and complete stability in the Premier League, and then he leaves after not signing a new contract. He was out of contract. I spoke to the director of football earlier in the summer, and he said that Fulham were completely blindsided. They actually thought that Marco was going to commit, and now they've had to react because he's obviously gone to Benfica. But there's been 9 new managers in this Premier League heading into this new season, and two added on managers in De Zerbi and Carrick, who have been in the job for not very long. So there's so many unknowns. Over half the league has basically a completely new look to their side in terms of managerial sense, in a managerial sense. So what I take away from Arbeloa is that he's inherited a squad that's basically been very, very stable in the Premier League, and he's implementing a style which is certainly a little bit more it's incredibly risky. It's high risk, high reward football. Whereas under Silva, yes, we would go out and try and win every single game, but there was an element of pragmatism to the way we'd play. If we were under the cosh, we would put men behind the ball and we would try and defend, etc. But with Fulham last night, there seemed to be it was all on the attack, and if we had to defend, then so be it, sort of attitude, which obviously makes me incredibly nervous because teams at Premier League level can just punish you. But it has been a strange period because all I've sort of known for the last 5 years and since I've become a journalist is that Marco Silva is in charge of Fulham, and then you get a new manager in who has a completely different style. His press conferences are slightly different, difference in his answers and stuff. It's going to take a while to get used to, but I do like Arbeloa. I really do like his character. I like his ambition. I like the way he speaks. Marco Silva was much more direct and would sometimes, call out the board when he wasn't happy about certain transfer situations, which usually happened fairly often. But it's been the opposite of Arbeloa, where he's been like, oh, I've loved working with the board. I'm really, really happy. So it's been a change, and of course the style of play as well is just, it's so different to Marco Silva. It's the same sort of formation, although it's, Fulham sort of put a little bit more men forward. It's almost like a 4-1-4-1 in possession, lots of attackers on the pitch, and then the width coming from the fullback, so it's slightly different in that sense. But it's almost like a 4-3-3 on paper. But yeah, it's going to take a lot of getting used to. And to be fair, we got to get that first 3 points at some point, because otherwise fans are going to get very restless. But I think last night there were a lot of positives to take from the game for sure.
Likewise, yeah, important game. Even though it's the second one of the season, our fans are hoping for 3 points at the weekend, and we'll get on that after the break. But just before we go to a break, I'm looking at the relegation odds in the Premier League. Hull favourites, Coventry second favourites, Ipswich third favourites, then Sunderland, then Fulham. So this is a meeting of 2 clubs who everybody thinks is going to struggle this season. And I'll be honest, when we did our season prediction, my outside bet for a team that would struggle was Fulham. I said on that podcast, I just think, when you look at the scope of things, that Fulham may well be in the mix. But, Sunderland defied the odds last season. I'm sure there'll be other clubs that defy the odds this season. But how does that make you feel when you hear that Fulham are being doubted?
Yeah, I've been through it all summer. I've been doing all these previews and stuff, and with other fans, and they've had Fulham down in 17th, or they think they're going to go down, and you just have to sort of take it on the chin. I can't sit here and say, we did our preview pod last week, and I had Sunderland in my bottom 3. just based on the business that Sunderland had done this summer, and then the added pressures of the Europa League and what that brings, the extra strain on the squad. But that's just again, you want to go with something a little bit different. You don't necessarily want to start backing all three promoted sides to go back down. We've seen in the last season that doesn't usually happen, or that hasn't happened. That didn't happen last season. It has happened in the previous couple of seasons before that, to be fair. I thought Coventry were terrible on Friday night. I thought Hull were fantastic against Manchester United, and Ipswich did really well to get the win over you guys. So it's going to be interesting, isn't it? And look, Fulham, when you lose Harry Wilson, you lose Raul Jimenez, you lose Marco Silva, that stability, that those goal scorers that got you into such good places in the last few years, when they go and the manager goes, you think, well, how are Fulham going to react? It's quite an easy thing to say that you think Fulham are going to struggle, to be fair, because you would come to that conclusion based on the fact that they've lost two massive goal scorers and a solid manager. But I think I saw enough last night in us going forward that makes me feel like we're going to score a lot of goals. And we scored 2 last night. We could have scored more. And I think we'll be all right. But it's just the defensive side of things. We're going to concede loads of goals this season. So we've got to try and score just as many, if not more, to try and tip the scales in our favour. But I think Sunderland are a very, very strong side. I think they've got a really good squad. I think they've got a really good manager. And I think if they can balance Europa League and Premier League, they'll be fine. But it's all about getting that first win, because what Sunderland did so well last season was they won the first game of the season. That was just a launch pad for them to go. And they were absolutely brilliant from there. Getting off to a slow start in the Premier League from experience, it means that you're playing catch up and suddenly you're struggling for basically the whole season. And it's hard to pick up form when you're struggling. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to be a massive game on Sunday for sure.
It is, and we'll get into that a little bit more after this break. So we'll join you back after these adverts, and we'll see you in a few minutes. And welcome back to Haway the podcast. And yes, I did reveal this on YouTube the other day, but we don't actually go anywhere when we go for an ad break. So if you are listening on the pod feeds, thank you very much for listening to all the adverts, and welcome back on YouTube for the couple of seconds we were away. But yes, we're going to get into the game, Jack. And just before we do, you mentioned before about the 2 games last season. Now, Fulham were the only team in the Premier League to do the double over Sunderland last season. You mentioned the game at the Stadium of Light. I remember being super positive going into that game. I think we'd only just lost at home for the first time, because we went unbeaten longer than any team in the Premier League. We played Liverpool, lost a really close game 1-0, and then I think the next home game after that was Fulham. And despite losing to Liverpool and losing that unbeaten streak, I think everybody was really, really positive going into that game. And I've got to say, Fulham did a number on us. You were brilliant that day. It was just, the counter-attacking football was good. I thought the lads at the back, particularly Bassey, I never saw Brian Brobby get bullied like that all season, really. And he's a physical striker who bullies most defenders. He couldn't get a sniff off Bassey. And that was difficult to take, I think, at the time, because I remember doing the pod after the game and we were all flat as a fart, and it was because we thought we were going to win that game. And I think what it probably should teach people is that despite Fulham being one of the teams tipped to struggle this season, despite Fulham losing like we did in the first match week, that you've got a good side. And you mentioned before the break, you said you think Sunderland have got a good team, got a good manager. This is a league full of good teams, good managers, good players. Is there anything to sort of take from last season into this, or do you think it doesn't really matter? Like, well, from a mentality perspective, will the players be like, oh, we beat these last season twice, so, we're quite confident about our chances this time? Like, do you think there's anything to take from the last set of games or not?
The record's obviously decent, but in terms of what happened within those games, Raul Jimenez scoring at the Cottage, set up by Chukwueze, 2 players who are not here anymore. And then at your place, Raul Jimenez getting 2 goals, he's not here. Haway getting the 3rd, set up by Harry Wilson, who is not here. So it's going to be very, very different, to be fair, and it's going to be an intense game. I do remember being at the Stadium of Light that day, and it felt like we gave away a really stupid penalty at the time. Enzo Lefebvre scored and you were straight back in the game, but Fulham managed the game really, really well. I imagine if that situation happened again, let's say Fulham went 2 up, Sunderland got a goal back, I think Fulham would look far more vulnerable and and maybe struggle to see the game out just because of, the crowd will be up, they'll be pushing them on, and we might just be a little bit vulnerable when it comes to, like I say, Brian Brobby up against Jorge Cuenca or Calvin Bassey and the players playing off him as well. Enzo Lefebvre, Angulo, Hume, players like that. So I think this is going to be a really, really tough game for Fulham. And obviously off the back of a defeat, going away from home against a side who was really strong at home last season is going to be difficult. And Sunderland, obviously, I feel like you're feeling encouraged from your performance against Ipswich. You scored a really, really good free kick, created a couple of decent opportunities, but we're disappointed the way you lost the game in the last minute, especially to a player who used to play for Sunderland. You know all about Jack Clark, the way he cuts inside, etc. So, you'll be right up for this. And I think it's basically how can Fulham deal with a cauldron of an atmosphere, because it's the first time we're playing away from home under Arbeloa in the Premier League. And what I would be interested to see is how Fulham deal with taking the lead. We haven't been in the lead yet under Arbeloa in the Premier League. So, how many men will we commit forward trying to get a second goal rather than trying to defend it and trying to prevent Sunderland from getting back in the game? It's really hard to call, especially so raw off the game from last night. But I'm really looking forward to it. I like going to Sunderland. It's going to be my third time to Stadium of Light. So it's going to be fantastic. I'm sure the atmosphere will be cracking.
Yeah, you mentioned the style of player there, and obviously at home it's a lot easier to be open, I think, when you've got the crowd behind you, when you're expected to play on the front foot. It is a lot easier to do that. Not many teams go away from home and do that. Not many teams would, particularly the Stadium of Light, would come play with a really high line, force us back. It doesn't really happen that often, even with top teams. Sometimes they come with a lot of caution, and they're like, well, we're not going to try and overwhelm them too early in the game. Do you think Arbeloa is completely wedded to a style of play, or is he? Do you think he'll try and play a little bit differently in this one?
I think he's basically sticking to it, because last night in his post-match press conference, he said that this is the way we're going to be playing this season. And
I've got to admit that worries me when I hear that. It just gives us Russell Martin vibes.
It does, but Fulham do have enough. Last night we created quite a few chances. We're not going to be playing against the quality of Chelsea every single week, where they have billion-pound players, etc. So, Sunderland is obviously going to be a tough game. I think any game in this Premier League season is going to be tough. You go away to Hull City, the MKM Stadium, Man United, we're thinking this is a shoe-in for us to get a 3 points here. We just get off to a good start, and they were just awful. They crumbled. Ipswich Town have beaten you, so I mean it's proving that the sides who have come up, and obviously Coventry play Hull at the weekend. We'll see what they do at home as well. So there's no you can't look at any fixture and be like 3 points easy. It's just impossible, because anything can happen in these games. It does concern me when obviously Arbeloa comes out and says this is the way we're going to be playing. It'll be interesting to see what we do on Thursday night when we play Wimbledon, because that would be a team that we're expected to beat, have a lot of the ball. I mean, we did have more of the ball last night than Chelsea, which is obviously encouraging, but the goals we conceded were so sloppy, so poor, and obviously that does concern me. We're still a work in progress, so I think this is a good time to play Fulham when there's still some teething issues at the back. For sure. And I think players like Lefebvre, Brobby, who just have complete and utter quality, they can definitely get a goal or two. I think there'll be goals in this game. I think there'll be goals in every Fulham game this season, just by the way that we play. But don't underestimate Gonzalo Garcia, because he's a pressing monster. I mean, he pressed Sanchez so much last night that he ended up winning a corner, and he ended up getting his goal. He ran his socks off for the whole 90 minutes. I think Arbeloa is going to stick with the style of play. I think it's going to be stressful to watch. It's going to have a lot of fans with their hearts in their mouths, for sure, like I said earlier. But it's going to be fun. I mean, it was actually a really fun game to watch last night. But probably more fun for the neutral than a Fulham fan, to be fair.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're recording this before you play Wimbledon in the Cup, but let's just presume that's going to be pretty much a fully changed team. You're playing lower league opposition, you're at home. It's almost like another pre-season game, really. Yeah. I always think them early round cup games, it's just a chance to give all your second string a run out, isn't it, really? So if we presume that, what do you think the team will kind of look like when you come to the Stadium of Light? Is it going to basically be the same 11, or do you expect a tweak here and there?
I think it would be the same. I don't right now anticipate a change unless we brought in a right-sided centre-back and Arbeloa wanted to throw him straight in. But as we said earlier, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I don't see... Maybe Kenny Tete comes in for Timothy Castagna, maybe. But I thought Castagna had an okay game last night. Apart from that, I can't really identify where I make an obvious change. You know, a lot of people might call for Kevin to start on the left instead of Palacios, but I'd rather Palacios started and Kevin come off the bench. Kevin, of course, picked up a really bad injury in the first half of the Sunderland last season, which is irrelevant, but it was just something I just thought I'd throw in. But yeah, we'll see. I think right now I'd go unchanged. We don't know what's going to happen against Wimbledon, of course, but maybe Smith Rowe will start and he'll be absolutely unbelievable and it'll be cool for him to start. But King was fantastic last night. I think Iwobi could be one that could be vulnerable, perhaps. Shea Charles could come in for him. But as it stands, I think I'd go with the same 11 for sure.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to that game last season at the stadium. I thought Iwobi played well in that game too. He was all over our midfield. I don't know how much that plays. It's a totally different manager. It's a different season. Like, I don't know how much it plays into thinking, but maybe some of those players will feature. But interesting to say that you think it's going to pretty much be unchanged, because looking at the 11, it's a very organized looking team, really. Functional midfield players, good pace out wide and creativity, a striker who people know very little about. What's your confidence like going into this game? Like, for me, I always say this on our podcast, and it's boring, but I always say this: I'd take a point anywhere away from home. It could be Ipswich, Hull, Fulham, Man United, anybody. If you come away with a point, I think you've done all right away from home. But you said yourself, you've got to win eventually, right? It's only the second game, of course. After this, Fulham have got, I think, a relatively difficult run leading up to the international break. Maybe not quite as difficult as ours, but after this, you play Palace, who are an unknown quantity this season. Then you've got Liverpool away, Man United, and then you've got the international break. So, would a point be a good result for this game, do you think? Or are you thinking, we have to win at Sunderland?
I think a point would be okay. Just to get on the board for sure. It's obviously, like I say, it's going to take some time to adapt to this new system, to this Premier League. In this Premier League season, Sunderland away, I'd take a point. I would have taken a point last season there, and we came away with 3, which is fantastic. But yeah, this is obviously, we looked at the fixture list, we saw Chelsea, Sunderland, Palace, Liverpool, United, and we were like, we could end up with 0 points from the first 5, because Palace have this insane record at Craven Cottage. Going to Anfield's tricky. Hosting United, you don't know what you're going to get, essentially. Going to Sunderland's going to be tough, and hosting Chelsea will be difficult as well, which proved to be the case last night. I'm going into this game feeling pretty nervous. I think if Régis Le Bris looks at that game last night and he goes, well, if we can get Robbie running over balls over the top towards Brian Brobby, running after the ball and our defenders chasing back, there's going to be opportunity there. And then you pick up the ball with Enzo Lefebvre, Angulo, players like that. There's going to be chances, certainly for Sunderland. I think it's going to be end to end, because I think, again, I think this system brings a bit of chaos, and I think it's going to be a season full of end to end games, a bit of a basketball match. But also, it's funny because there was chaos in the game last night, but Arbeloa's system also brings like an element of control, where he wants to control possession, a very Spanish style of play, where in midfield he wants a lot of control and he wants to create chances from there. But it ends up just being, if there's an early goal in the game, which there was last night, the game just ends up being far too open, and we look far too exposed. The gaps between our centre backs was far too large. Sander Berger was losing the ball quite a few times, playing as the 6. So if you can press him high, I think if Sunderland press us, we're going to have to try and play out. We're going to have to try and beat the press. Equally, Sunderland will have to deal with our press as well. Josh King, Oscar Bob, Gonzalo Garcia. It's really hard to give a score prediction right now. I probably would look at something like 2-2. I think there'll be goals, but it's hard to call. I want to see Fulham again this week and then make my mind up for Sunderland. But right now, I'd probably go for a 2-2 draw.
Yeah, well, you've said there might be goals. So who are the players who you think will If you're going to get a good result, whether that's a draw or a win, who are the players you think will make the difference? Because you mentioned a couple already who you're quite excited about, but like who you're looking to really take the game by the scruff of the neck, control the ball, run the show, I guess.
Oh, I want to see a little bit more from Sanderberger. I think he had a poor game last night, but if he had a little bit more control and he's got a little bit more space, he can play better passes, be a little bit calmer on the ball. I think Robinson's massively key on the left-hand side, but Josh King has got himself into really good areas, into the box, creating chances, scored the goal last night, and then obviously Garcia pressing from the front. Palacios is a good player as well, who can link up play and play those sort of defence-splitting passes as well. So there's 4 or 5 players that I'm looking at that can create, and then Oscar Bob can still cut in from the right and get shots away as well. So there's plenty to be excited about for Fulham, but also I am nervous because you look at how exposed Fulham looked last night, and Sunderland will be licking their lips really, because I think any side will be licking their lips at the prospect of playing Fulham, because there are opportunities if you play the right balls, if you hit them in transition, if you win the ball high up the pitch, there's going to be opportunities to score.
And likewise, I guess if you watch Sunderland's highlights against Ipswich and you see both goals came from central defenders trying to play out from the back, I'm sure your manager will be doing the same. Although I suspect we'll probably take less risks against Fulham, and maybe when you get the opportunity to hoof it, just do it. But it should be an interesting game. I think this might actually be one that both of us look back on further down the line this season and go, that was a big game. Even though we're 2 games in, I think both of us probably need to win this. I'm looking at the games you've got coming up and the games we've got coming up, and it's like I would be stupid to call it a must win. It's not a must win because there are going to be 36 other games to play this season in the league, but it's like I think you don't win this, and it's like, God, where do your next couple of points come from? Like your next 3 points come from, really, because there's some tough games coming up. So in that sense, it's a really, really important game. If I was a neutral, I'd have my eyes all over this game on Sunday. I think even though maybe, for the TV cameras and stuff, it's probably not the most fashionable game of the weekend, I think this could be one of the games of the weekend. I think you're right. There's going to be goals in it. Both teams going into it with an understanding like we probably need to win this really to get our season underway. And that makes it a little bit exciting, but also makes me very, very nervous about if we don't win it, like what's the reaction going to be like and all the rest of it. So it should be a really, really interesting game, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for joining us, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope you enjoy your trip up to the stadium as much as you can. Not too much, obviously. I don't want you to win, but good luck for the rest of the season, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy the hospitality in the Northeast. And if you don't go home with 3 points, you have at least had a decent afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, last season, the press room, I usually do like food reviews for my Patreon and stuff. And last season, Sunderland won it by a country mile with roast lamb. Nice. It was absolutely unbelievable. But yeah, staying up in Newcastle because the trains, no direct trains on the day, so I have to stay there for 2 nights. So it's going to be a long weekend in Newcastle, and then get the metro over to Sunderland on the Sunday morning. It should be good fun, and hopefully we come away with something, because it's going to be a great game.
Yeah. Where can people find all of your stuff, Jack, if they want to hear what you've got to say ahead of the game, after the game and stuff? Because if anybody's like me, I love hearing the perspective from the other side as well. So if people want to pick up your stuff, where can they go?
Yeah, it's just at Jackely FFC, JACKELLY FFC. That's my Twitter. And then if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's Jack Kelly, journalist covering Fulham FC.
Brilliant. Well, yes, once again, mate, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure we'll chat again later in the season. Hopefully neither of us are in the mire. Hopefully we're both going at that game thinking, yeah, remember that conversation at the start of the season? We're doing all right now. But thank you very much, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. It's been great. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you to our listeners. We will be back tomorrow with a match day preview, and also hopefully a pubcast after the game. With this being a home game, we're going to get together after the match in the pub to have a little chat, and hopefully we're talking about a Sunderland win. Sorry, Jack. We've got plenty coming up on rotoreport.sbnation.com. And if you want to follow us on social media, we are at Rotor Report. We've also got a Haway the Podcast Twitter page as well, which you might not be aware of. We're going to be a little bit more active on that one now that we're on the old YouTube. Thank you for joining us on YouTube, by the way. I know this is literally a week old. Hopefully we're getting things right and we're ironing out any sort of little bits and pieces. Hopefully the content's been well received. But get subscribed if you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube. Seems weird to say that. I feel like one of these content creators, which I guess I am now. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.